Hello and welcome to another edition of the NRS Insights podcast. I'm John Lovestock, and today I am once again proud to be joined by Susie Silliman, who is the Senior Vice President of Data Strategy and Sales at NRS, and Brandon Thurber, the Vice President of Data Sales and Client Success at NRS. And today we're going to be discussing the NRS Insights May 2024 Retail Same Store Sales Report. So we have some good results to report. And for those of you who don't know, the NRS network has an expansive reach into retail. Today, the network has surpassed 30,000 terminals and now serves approximately 27,000 retail stores, including convenience stores, bodegas, liquor stores, grocers, and many, many others. So with that, I'd like to start turning our focus to the May report, which I skimmed through and saw that a very strong month. NRS reported same-store sales increased nearly 5%, driven by some core categories like smokeless tobacco. So now let me turn it over to Susie and Brandon, and you guys can tell us a little bit about what we're seeing.
Sure. Brandon, why don't you get started here?
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Susie. So as we've continued to talk, NRS stores transactions are on the rise compared to last year, compared to previous period. And when we benchmark ourselves in this report up against U.S. retail commerce, we see that sales typically outpace the U.S. retail commerce between 2 and 6%. And that is mainly driven by this higher frequency or higher transaction number. And then when we compare to published numbers around convenience stores, if you eliminate the non-fuel, non-food service trips, the NRS independent, primarily non-fuel network is outpacing from a transaction perspective of those stores. So then that leads to pretty positive sales results, as you mentioned, up nearly 5% versus last year. And it's not just price increases. We've seen the inflation numbers, the price increases kind of tempered year over year. So more people buying more things, spending more money continues to be our slogan here.
That's good to hear. Spending more money is one of our industry's favorite things. So we talked just a bit before we got on the call, before we went live, and there were a couple of things that stood out. Obviously, smokeless tobacco doing really well. Cigarette sales down, which is the trend. I mean, that's just been the trend since 1996. So I say that everywhere I go. And sports drinks, surprisingly, were also continue to go down. So can you guys touch on some core specific category data that you're seeing? Maybe some trends, anomalies, some things that stood out to you this past month, or even
Sure.
the past quarter, even not just a month.
Yeah. So, John, I think there's, with May being the start of cold beverage season, it's important to really look into the beverages category by category and see if there are any anomalies. Like overall, we expect to see increases, certainly versus prior period, but if overall our stores are performing ahead of year ago, as Brandon just shared they are, we, for the most part, would expect to see those major beverage categories from a fair share perspective also comparably performing. So we have talked a couple of episodes about how I think that we're on our third or fourth month now of the energy drink category really being stagnant, slowly declining, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that again here in May, even with it being sort of the kickoff of cold beverage season. You brought up sports drinks. That is even a more significant decline that we have seen now for a few months recurring. Again, summer is here. There's no denying it. Unofficial kickoff of summer in terms of Memorial Day, a lot more sporting activities, outdoor activities, et cetera. To see the declines that category continues to suffer, particularly in our network, definitely raises some red flags in terms of, what that means for the category.
Sure.
And if there is an opportunity for any type of trend reverse. especially while at the same time, we're seeing carbonated soft drinks, water, every variety of water, whether that is just, your still bottled water, your functional water, your sparkling water, your flavored water, every variation of water is increasing. Even coconut water, fruit, fruit drinks, fruit juices, etc. So the fact that these two categories sort of in isolation are underperforming is, I definitely think, something that we need to keep an eye on, but the industry needs to keep an eye on, particularly the retailers who have allocated quite a bit of space to these categories, and they need to make sure that they are not sort of over allocating a declining category.
Sure. So I'm going to put both of you on the spot a little bit. Is this, we're in the middle of a heat wave. I don't know what the weather's like out in the Berg, by the way. Pittsburgh was just voted like the top city to live in, just as a side note. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not.
Yesterday, I read a report. Heat wave, it's very hot. I'm sure it's hot there, hot, humid, muggy. And to see that these historically drinks that people turn to on these heat waves, to see that the sales are down. Is this something we could expect to see going forward? Could you put your kind of magic hats on and tell me what you think long term if the weather stays hot?
So I was going to I'll jump in first and I'll let Brandon elaborate. So remember, the data is really only through the end of May, right? So this is the May recap. So in terms of really the brutal heat wave, has really not onset until the last few weeks. So that is something we're going to have a much better look at in the June data in next month's podcast, because we will, nationally, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, Northeast, et cetera, we're all under these like excruciating history making high temperature trends. 5 days in Pittsburgh, it's going to be over 5 consecutive days of over 90-degree heat in June, which they're saying has never happened before, right? So it will be interesting to see how the consumer or shopper responds to that. And I don't think we have enough visibility right now to make that claim, but next month it will be very enlightening, because if we're not seeing recovery, particularly in the sports drink category, that's going to be very telling. That volume is going to, or those sales have to be going somewhere. People are not hydrating. Brandon?
Yeah, I agree. This heat wave, I'm anxious to get to the details behind the data. And if go back, instead of looking magic hat looking forward, if we remember about a year ago, there were a lot of viral trends in both the energy and the sports drink category that saw great spikes. So we are lapping that a bit. But at this time last year, the more flavorful sports drinks were the ones that were seeing the biggest growth. And so that is another factor that's playing into this as well. Can we kind of tease out pockets of growth versus the more stagnant brands or flavors, experiencing a bit of a decline?
So you say viral trends. The first thing that came to my mind was the Tide Pod flavored sports drink that I used to be such a big fan of.
John.
One of the
that
other
was a few years ago now.
When you get to be my age, it's like 2 weeks ago, as far as I'm concerned. Another big trend has been the protein trend. I mean, the protein bars, even meat snacks. Is that carrying over to the sports drink category? There's so many protein-based sports drinks now.
Right. So last month when we spoke, we really looked at the DMA level, which is a distinct marketing area, a geo that is a little bit lower than a state level, for those who's not familiar with the acronym DMA. And what we did see was there was definitely a relationship between sports nutritional shakes increasing and your sports drinks decreasing. So those markets that have the most significant decreases in sports drinks simultaneously had the greatest increases in the sports nutritional drinks. But there's sort of a couple of things going on there. One from a major change, major trend, etc., is the commonality, increased popularity of the GLP-1 drug for weight loss purposes. And if you know anything about that drug or have read anything about that drug, it suppresses the appetite. You are not hungry on that drug.
I'm going to start ingesting that drug soon, like candy, by the way.
But because of that, if you are, we'll say, a patient who's on that medicine, you need to be very sort of deliberate and thoughtful to make sure you are getting your protein levels.
Mm-hmm.
So within that whole GLP-1 community, there's a heightened interest and consumption of protein types of offerings, including the protein shakes, the protein snacks, like your Quest nacho chips, the protein bars, jerky, etc.
Yeah, it's kind of akin to the Atkins movement years ago, right? So the same kind of the products started coming out that were friendly with that diet.
Right. The primary difference there, and I was on Atkins back when I was on keto, etc. My appetite was never suppressed, right? It did not chemically alter sort of that desire or hang on.
Taking that a step further and branching out a little bit more, when I think there becomes a sugar consumption awareness in conjunction with that. And if you look at our data from a 0-calorie / diet, either in the soft drinks or the sports drinks category, it's like 90 to 10 or even more drastic than that, which is far different than the national average. The national average is cited anywhere between 30 and 40% of diet and zero. So because we have a higher percentage of consumer that is consuming the sugary drinks, they might be experiencing that same kind of awareness and making other choices there as well.
That's really fascinating. I'm these drugs. I guess these drugs actually do work. It's kind of getting off topic, I guess, but people report not eating. I've never thought about what that would do to restaurant sales, to C-store sales, to snack sales.
Forgetting to eat, like I cannot even imagine myself forgetting to eat.
Yeah, that's like another language. Just don't get that. But you know what? I'm looking over the report. That could be another reason why NA beer sales are up. I mean, I just don't know how to.
So NA beer is becoming that is just a movement in itself, I believe. That the now legal age alcoholic beverage consumer is exploring this sober, curious lifestyle, or they're mixing a bit, right? To be in a social setting, to have maybe 2 or more drinks and then swap out an NA beer. So to lessen the cognitive, we'll call it impact, that is a choice that is growing more and more popular.
That's a thing for real?
Yeah, it is becoming. You want to be in the same environment. You're social. You're having a beer, but it may just have 0 alcohol in it. Another kind of interesting beer phenomenon that we've teased out from this. So it's no secret that prepared cocktails and wine-based cocktails and those things are growing as well. The other thing is flavored malt beverage and cider is growing faster than beer. but that there's a story kind of one level down, and it's on availability. So because the prepared cocktails are spirits-based drinks, their availability is subject to the spirits-based laws of those states. So we see that ciders and flavored malt beverages are growing faster in stores where they're not competing against the prepared cocktails. And then if they're both competing, then the prepared cocktails seem to be getting a little bit higher share than the F&B cider growth.
There's one brand that I hear retailers talking about, and friends talking about out of stock or different varieties. Maybe not the brand, but the variety they like. Is it Sunrise? The ones in the little can?
So
Um,
I've heard of Surfside.
Maybe it's Surfside. Let me take a look.
That is
Like
a tea
vodka.
alternative.
Which one?
It's an iced tea spirits based
Yes, that's
cocktail, I
exactly
believe.
Surfside.
Yeah.
That they can't keep them in stock, kind of like the White Claw trend during COVID, that they're just having a hard time getting the varieties and keeping them in stock.
Yeah, so like for White Claw, for instance, in states that allow spirits and beer sales to be sold together, then White Claw is available everywhere. On
Mm-hmm.
the other side, High Noon is a spirits based cocktail, but it or a spirits based cider, and it has limited availability based on those laws. But that's what so when we're seeing those things sold side by side, the spirits base is actually picking up, and it's all flavor preference. Everybody talks about kind of this generation being fully customized, in some ways spoiled for having as much at their fingertips as possible in many different flavors, etc. But we're definitely seeing an impact here.
Right.
So over Memorial Day, John, again, we saw those traditional spirits, almost every category being down versus year ago as a consequence of this, except for tequila and cordials. Those two categories did continue to be strong. So tequila is still having its moment despite the proliferation of tequila-based prepared cocktails.
That actually factors into potentially. It's a bit of a stretch, but if you think of back in the day when vodka, rum, whiskey were such a higher share of the spirits category, well, the mixers that went with those were often soft drinks, colas, those sorts of things. So, but tequila has a whole different set of mixers that it goes alongside. Things like fruit juice, fruit drink, margarita mix, like the true mixers. So they're, based on association, there's a shift there as well.
Okay. Very good. All right. So, any other trending data? Any other category data that you want to throw out there that our retailers should keep an eye on? Brandon.
We're still seeing some struggles for the for the candy category. I would expect, particularly with this heat wave, and it's chocolate generally has some seasonality in the hotter months to begin with. Even though our stores tend to have been a bit insulated from that in the past, but I mean, I don't expect to see any turnaround in that trend for candy in the next few months.
Okay. Great. Brandon, anything?
Nothing for me, no, other than stay tuned to next month's report when we can get a better handle on the most recent industry impacts.
Great. And I do love reading that report. So, Brandon, tell everyone where they can get that report.
You can Google or set your news alerts to the NRS same store sales report, and it will come out the first 5 business days of the month, or you can go to our parent company, IDT.net.
Great. Thank you, guys. So for Susie and Brandon, I'm John Lovestock. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. We look forward to having you on next month's podcast where we discuss the June numbers. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.